You know Thanksgiving. You've seen it on television. But what is it? Why do they celebrate it? And how do real Americans actually spend the day? Today I'm joined with my American friend Wes from Interactive English, and he is going to answer some very interesting questions about Thanksgiving in the United States. Hello, I'm Greg, and if you're new here, my advanced English lessons help you express yourself clearly and confidently in English. Click subscribe and click the bell to get new lessons every Friday from me. Now, as I said, we are joined today by a very special guest, Wes from Interactive English. Hello, Wes.
Hey everyone, my name is Wes. I am an English teacher and I've been teaching English for a little over 15 years now. I've taught in 4 different countries in the United States, South Korea, Namibia, the Dominican Republic. I really enjoy teaching. I love it. It is my passion. I'm from the United States and I've lived all over the US. I grew up on the East Coast. I went to university in Colorado, and the last time I was living there was in California on the West Coast. So I said the last time I was living there because right now I don't live there at the moment. I live in Budapest, Hungary. So even though I'm from the US, currently I live in Europe.
Oh, I went to Budapest a few years ago and absolutely loved it. What a beautiful city. All right, Wes, so when is Thanksgiving and why do North Americans celebrate it?
So Thanksgiving is celebrated on the 4th Thursday in November. It's always going to be on that 4th Thursday, so the date will change year to year. And it is a little different because there are other countries out there that celebrate Thanksgiving, but at a different time. For example, Canada, our neighbor to the north, celebrates Thanksgiving in October. But in the US, it is the 4th Thursday in November. And it's celebrated historically to give thanks for the harvest. A long time ago, back in the 1600s, the Pilgrims, they left England, came to the US, even though at that time it was not the United States. And the story, or I'd say it's more like the folktale story that they would teach kids in school, is that the Native Americans, the Indians that were there at the time, they helped out the Pilgrims with crops and just kind of helped them survive. And then they all came together and celebrated Thanksgiving and just had this giant meal, a big feast together.
Okay, so the Native Americans welcomed the English Pilgrims and gave them food and welcomed them with open arms and helped them survive. That's a beautiful story and a good reason to celebrate, and a great thing to do. I mean, what a great way to welcome immigrants, right? You know, I actually lived in the States for a few years, and my first Thanksgiving there, we were welcomed into the house of a lovely couple. There was me, there was my wife who is Spanish, there were people from all over the world. There were Indians, there was somebody from Afghanistan, there was, I can't remember who else, there was another couple of foreigners, but they do this every year and they welcome foreigners who don't necessarily have family living there to join and celebrate the feast of Thanksgiving with them. That was my first Thanksgiving, and I guess it's a close representation of the origins of the story. So Wes, you said you don't live in the United States anymore, you're living in Budapest. So how are you celebrating this year?
This year, I really don't know how we're going to celebrate Thanksgiving. Maybe we'll go out, grab a turkey, and just have something here, cook a meal here at home. There is one, last year we did find one restaurant in Budapest that had this Thanksgiving meal. It was actually a Mexican restaurant, and they would do, every Thanksgiving, they would have just this Thanksgiving burrito with turkey and cranberry sauce and stuffing. And maybe we'll end up doing that again, and just we'll go to that Mexican restaurant and get a Thanksgiving burrito.
So I'm no expert, Wes, but from what I know, a Thanksgiving burrito is not the most typical way of celebrating Thanksgiving. So could you tell us how most people celebrate the day?
That is absolutely not a typical Thanksgiving. I think Thanksgiving is really more of a family holiday. So I think it is an important family holiday where everyone would come and get together. It's also a big food holiday. So everybody would get together, they'd have a big feast, and that's typically how I think families in the US would celebrate Thanksgiving.
So food plays a really important part of the day, right? I remember my other Thanksgivings in the States, we used to always go to our friend's house, and as you said, the main focus of the day was a big meal, which was delicious. But I have to say, there were things on my first Thanksgiving that I didn't really know what they were. They were new food for me. So could you explain a little bit about a typical Thanksgiving meal?
Thanksgiving meal is, well, obviously turkey is like the staple food for Thanksgiving. You can't really have Thanksgiving without turkey. And then there you would have stuffing, cranberry sauce, what else? Corn, mashed potatoes. Really just, you'd have kind of a variety of foods, and everybody would just share. You'd pass around the corn and people would take a little, put it on their plate, pass around the turkey, and you'd really just have a lot of different food. But turkey is, I think, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, corn. Those are kind of, I think, the main foods that people would have at Thanksgiving.
Delicious. And a lot of it is actually very similar to what we eat on Christmas Day in England. The turkey, the stuffing. Okay, now let's get serious a second, Wes. I think a lot of us imagine on Thanksgiving, we imagine everybody sitting around a table, and perhaps after you've eaten, you each tell everybody else what you are thankful for this year. Thankful for your health, thankful for getting a new job, thankful for being surrounded by your friends, etc. Now, is that something that we just perhaps see on television sometimes? Or do you actually do that?
Do people actually sit around and say thanks? Yeah, I think some people do. In my experience, our family would typically have everybody, we'd bring everybody together, and I'd say probably maybe about a third of the time we've actually gone around and said something that we're thankful for and that we appreciate. I think each family might have their own tradition, and some families may do this. My family, I'm not really sure why it never really stuck. Some years we would do it, and then other years we might not do it. And mostly I think everybody would just come together at that dinner table and just have a nice feast.
All right, Wes, got a bit of a strange question for you this time. What is the worst Thanksgiving you've ever had?
The worst Thanksgiving I've ever had. I've never really had like a worst Thanksgiving, or even like a Thanksgiving that stands out in my mind that was so much worse than the others. All of them, I think they've been pretty pleasant. You just get to get together with family and hang out and relax. So I don't have any story of Thanksgiving like you might see in a movie where the turkey explodes or there's just chaos and maybe the in-laws are fighting. I fortunately have not had any of that happen on Thanksgiving.
No exploding turkeys, no fighting families. Sounds good. I have to say that I only had 3 Thanksgivings in the States, but they were all super nice, and I really appreciated all the things that you've mentioned. Just being surrounded by friends and family, well, not my family, but family of my friends. We had a really nice atmosphere on each of the Thanksgivings I was there. And I think it's just such a lovely tradition and a lovely celebration. I really do. However, the day after Thanksgiving is a completely different thing. The day after Thanksgiving is Black Friday. And Black Friday used to be just an American thing, but it seems to be spreading like wildfire, spreading very quickly around the world. And over the past 10 years, this has become a big deal, both in England, where I'm from, and in Spain, where I live. Obviously, when I lived in the States, I saw it was a bit crazy too. So, Wes, what do you honestly really think of Black Friday?
Black Friday is something that I've never really been a big fan of in terms of when the day after Thanksgiving, you have Black Friday, everything goes on sales, people would rush out to the stores. It's usually just too crowded. I would always want to avoid that, especially with online shopping. Maybe I'll get something, order something online, but it's never really been a very important event for me. I think it's a very commercialized event and it's just really to get people out there shopping, spending money. And it's almost like immediately after Thanksgiving, you have Black Friday and people start thinking about Christmas and buying gifts and shopping. So it's a very quick transition, I think, from Thanksgiving right into the next holiday, which typically most people would celebrate Christmas in the US, and then you just head right into the new year. But in general, Black Friday, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I noticed that when we lived in the States, immediately the day after Thanksgiving, boom, it's Christmas all of a sudden. The town where I lived would have the lighting of the square. All the Christmas lights would come on in the city centre. We would often use the day to go and get a Christmas tree and decorate the house. It just felt like, okay, Thanksgiving is finished. Now it's Christmas. And as you say, it's a very, very quick transition from one to the next. Okay, well, I think that's everything for today. Wes, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the channel. So thank you. Where can we find you online?
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. And if you want to find me, you can find me at Interactive English on YouTube. I have a bunch of lessons there, helping learners build their vocabulary, improve pronunciation, speaking confidence, a little bit of everything, really just geared toward helping learners try to achieve English fluency. So Interactive English, that is where I am and will be in the future. So long.
All right, thank you so much, Wes. I will leave a link to Wes's channel at the end of the video and in the description. I recommend you check him out to learn some American English. And until next time, bye for now.